Hey guys, today I'll show you a science fiction thriller TV series named Halo, Season 1. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The drama begins in the year 2552 on the colony of planet Madrigal, where people were buzzing about the UN Security Council meeting, whose aim was to seize control of this precious planet for its valuable tritium resources. Although both sides claimed to be engaged in peaceful negotiations, the arrival of the UN Marine Corps and the Spartans, humanoid superweapons, would swiftly tip the balance. While the Marines were formidable, just one Spartan could effortlessly annihilate 100 of them, a terrifying prospect. An old man spoke of the Spartans as being less than human. They were faster, stronger, and smarter, essentially merciless killing machines. On planet Madrigal, the tribe leader's daughter, Quan, was an adventurous girl. One day, she and her friends crossed the watchtower to play near the border. Suddenly, her instincts tingled with unease as she spotted an alien spacecraft and heard strange noises from a nearby cave. She quickly warned her friends to escape, but before she could finish her warning, her companions' bodies were obliterated. Dodging the barrage, Quan activated an alert, shooting a flare to signal the watchtower. The watchtower promptly informed the tribe leader, mobilizing forces to establish a defensive line. While Quan was the only survivor who made it back, she was terrified as she communicated to her father that the newcomers were not from the UN, but rather a more horrifying alien race. Despite her urging him to seek shelter, her father was determined to fight, instructing her to hide in the rear. The calm before the storm was chilling, quickly shattered as enemy artillery blasted open the gates and alien creatures surged into the fray. After a brief skirmish, it became clear that the aliens outmatched the local forces in strength, size, and technology. The defenders were unable to breach the alien shields, and the battle quickly turned one-sided, with the alien warriors decimating the human soldiers. Quan, witnessing her father get injured, fled from the rear but narrowly escaped disaster, as chaos soon engulfed their location. Just as humanity teetered on the brink of extinction, a UN ship descended from the sky. With greater strength and superior equipment, the tide began to turn dramatically with the arrival of the Master Chief and his super soldier team, the Spartans. Surprisingly, the Spartans had come to assist humanity, proving formidable in both ranged and melee combat. Aside from Quan, who was still on the run, the Master Chief pressed forward, relentlessly pursuing the alien soldiers. However, Quan's father was not as fortunate. To further the plot and heighten Quan's tragedy, the tribe leader sacrificed himself to protect her, meeting a gruesome end. The Master Chief arrived just in time to dispatch the remaining foes. According to his assessment, Quan was the sole survivor in the area, and the devastation around her left her completely stunned. At that moment, the Master Chief and his team discovered the alien spacecraft and quickly entered the cave to investigate. They soon stumbled upon an alien device being excavated, but when the Master Chief triggered it, an immense energy began to surge. This unleashed a flood of hazy yet warm memories for him. Aside from one survivor, an alien warrior managed to escape. After encountering a beam of light, the Master Chief unexpectedly ordered his team to switch to another ship while he chose to return home with Quan. At the UN Space Command on Planet Reach, Dr. Halsey, the creator of the super soldiers, received urgent intel from the Master Chief. Just as she was getting excited, the Admiral arrived to reprimand her. After all, by the time the Spartans had arrived, the local human population had been wiped out, leaving only one survivor, which was not a pleasant fact to share. However, Dr. Halsey argued that the mysterious device they had discovered could provide critical insights into the aliens and the alien covenant, potentially a key to breaking the deadlock, and could also serve to silence the committee and the media. Additionally, they needed the survivor, Quan, to share any information beneficial to Planet Reach. Yet there were some matters and individuals that Dr. Halsey chose not to disclose fully. Meanwhile, at the Covenant Command, the alien elder praised their seer Maki for successfully predicting that the ruins were located on Madrigal Island. However, the coveted device they sought had not been retrieved. Instead, it was taken by the Spartans, whom the aliens referred to as demons. Although Maki was eager to find the Spartan, the elder advised her to forget human books and stories, asserting that the only reason to understand these was to know the enemy. They suggested that if Maki could share intelligence on the enemy, it would deepen their understanding. Grateful for the advice, Maki promised to take it to heart. On the other side, the Master Chief and the newly revived Quan were en route to Planet Reach. Scientist Miranda, representing the Security Council, engaged in friendly negotiations with Quan, expressing sorrow over the plight of her planet. However, she pointed out that her planet was not the first to face the hostile alien covenant, and unfortunately, it would not be the last. Thus, she urged Quan to represent Madrigal in the UN Security Council, as it was the only way to protect their land. This, however, merely masked the reality that Planet Madrigal would essentially become a mining colony and resource area for the UN. Quan, having been raised with her father's ideals of freedom, was unwilling to be a puppet for the UN, despite their inability to resist alien forces. Miranda encouraged Quan to share her experience with other planets, stating that Madrigal was attacked by the alien covenant and rescued by the Spartans. Quan, however, had a strong rebellious streak and retorted that she would tell the other planets that it was the UN who sent the Spartans to slaughter Madrigal, and that even if she has video evidence, people won't believe her. Thus, their friendly discussion quickly escalated. Quan insisted that while she could help them, she wanted independence for her home planet first. It was a lofty demand, unrealistic and foolish. Quan's outbursts seemed less rational and more a way to vent her frustrations, as she felt stripped of everything she once had. Back with Dr. Halsey, she noticed the device had a positive effect on the Master Chief and pressed him for details about his experience. He explained that when he touched it, he had a dream where he encountered a dog and a family in a forest. Concerned about further complications, the doctor advised him to steer clear of the device for the time being. Meanwhile, Miranda heard from her father that the UN was dissatisfied with Quan and planned to take decisive action as soon as Quan arrived on Reach, claiming they failed to rescue her from the aliens. This was standard procedure in political maneuvers, but it greatly displeased Miranda, who felt used as a pawn. Although the Master Chief was a humanoid weapon, many of his actions were beyond his control, often leaving him as helpless as Quan. Ultimately, the Master Chief received a message regarding the elimination of Target 72, which referred to Quan. However, the Master Chief had no intention of carrying out the order. Instead, he shut off the video feed from the ship. To the higher-ups, this was seen as insubordination. Typically, humanoid weapons lacked memory and functioned solely as killing machines, but the mysterious device had triggered the Master Chief's memories, causing him to waver. To maintain control over the two on board, the higher-ups gradually cut off their oxygen supply, leaving them in a state of near unconsciousness due to asphyxiation. Yet, as a super weapon, the Master Chief managed to get back on his feet and restore his oxygen supply. The Admiral, unable to accept this reality, dismissed Dr. Halsey and her team and began mobilizing forces to suppress their superweapon. It was an all-out effort to prepare for the Master Chief's arrival, including support from his own team. Although the commander had ordered the suppression and capture of the Master Chief, Dr. Halsey secretly instructed that if anything happened to him, the Spartans must fully support and protect him. The Spartans were unmatched within the military and were revered as heroes by all the troops. Meanwhile, a confused Quan awoke, thinking the Master Chief intended to harm her. To clarify, he removed his long-worn helmet and informed her about the UN's plans for elimination, expressing his desire to help her, although he admitted he was still figuring out the reasons behind it. With no other options, Quan resolved to take things one step at a time. They prepared to escape, needing to cut off the autopilot. Quan doubted the machine's capabilities, so she fired a burst of bullets to disable it successfully. However, the higher-ups retaliated with a pulse attack, surrounding them with military forces. With limited options, the Master Chief hoped for a solution from the device, while his Spartan allies outside prepared to execute the protection plan. Just then, the mysterious device went haywire, not only revealing memories the Master Chief had never seen before, but also unleashing a powerful energy wave. The energy wave caused an instant blackout at the military port and Planet Reach, providing the Master Chief and Quan with a chance to escape, embarking on their journey through danger and uncertainty. The scene flashes back to 22 years earlier at the UN Spartan Training Center, where the Master Chief was called John back then and was still training as Spartan 117. He glanced at his brother's bunk, feeling an emptiness inside. John wrestled with inner turmoil, but instinctively moved into action. He didn't wake anyone, armed himself, and carefully avoided the eyes of the outside world. Eventually, John found his follower Soren by the chain-link fence. Soren was puzzled. They had agreed to escape together, yet John hadn't brought any gear. After a brief hesitation, John explained he couldn't leave because every Spartan had a duty and couldn't jeopardize the mission. He threatened Soren with his gun, saying if he tried to leave, he would shoot. But Soren replied that if necessary, he would use any means to escape, including lethal force. This place isn't about training heroes, it's about turning them into killing machines. He questioned John if their wet dreams had any meaning. John simply replied he didn't have a dream. Soren insisted that's why they needed to go, to chase their wet dreams. Tomorrow morning they could have a nice breakfast on their wasteland and no one would find them. Seeing John with his gun cocked, Soren felt heartbroken. He showed his scarred arms and lamented that they took the most important thing from him and he didn't even realize it. He told him to shoot if he wanted. Realizing he couldn't hold Soren back, John relented, saying his gun was jammed and Soren had 5 minutes to leave. Otherwise, he would report it to the camp. Soren had no choice but to leave in haste. Reflecting on Soren's fate, John finally determined their next destination. With the device's assistance, they were speeding away and Quan was eager to know more about it, bombarding him with questions about its function and relevance to the ship. John could only reply that he didn't know. Quan pressed further, asking why he had chosen to save her. He answered he just didn't want to see a child killed. Meanwhile, the High Command on Reach struggled to understand the Master Chief's rebellion. They sought useful information from Dr. Halsey to ensure the absolute safety of the UN Security Council. The doctor, unusually candid, admitted she didn't know much but stressed the urgency of bringing the Master Chief back because he possessed the device with immense energy. The Covenant had dispatched 2 ships and dozens of alien soldiers to find him. The higher-ups perked up at this, recognizing it must be something valuable. However, they were skeptical of the Master Chief and the Spartans. Dr. Halsey insisted she believed in the Master Chief's loyalty and had already drafted a contingency plan. The higher-ups approved, saying since there's a plan, they would discuss it in the next meeting. Dr. Halsey then ordered some of the Spartans to find their Master Chief. Elsewhere, the spaceship weaved through the massive rubble, leaving Quan terrified, while John remained calm and collected. After navigating the treacherous terrain, they arrived at the ruined city, a symbol of freedom. However, Spartans weren't exactly welcomed there. As soon as they entered, a group of armed individuals pointed their guns at them. The Spartans' reputation preceded them, and no one dared to fire the first shot. Yet one bold individual deliberately blocked their path with a truck, only for John to nonchalantly push it aside, startling everyone around. Indeed, Master Chief John had come to find his old acquaintance, Soren, who naturally became their guide in this unfamiliar place. They soon learned that not only was the UN offering a bounty for Quan's capture, but even the puppet leader of Madrigal was also after her. Despite being in this city, various factions had eyes on them, but they set those concerns aside to first soak in the scenic beauty of the ruins. To John's surprise, he discovered that Soren had settled down, complete with a lovely little son and a leggy wife. Meanwhile, the alien Covenant was holding a meeting to discuss their next moves. Maki learned from alien soldiers that the Spartans had indeed taken the device, their relic, and noted that the Spartans exhibited energy and mediums when interacting with the relic, an aspect vital for the alien Covenant. Therefore, it was essential to retrieve it at all costs. Maki volunteered to join the mission, but the Elder hesitated, unwilling to let her leave the base. Despite Maki's assurances of her loyalty, the Elder remained concerned about the dangers involved. Maki insisted she was the only one who could move freely among humans and so qualified for this task. She reminded the elders of how they had sheltered and saved her, guiding her on a great journey. So now is her time to repay that kindness. The relic will make their sacred realm powerful once again. Her passionate rhetoric about restoring the greatness of the planet left the elders with little choice but to accept her plea to fight. Meanwhile, the UN Space Command was also in a meeting. They agreed to let the puppet leader become the actual ruler of Madrigal in exchange for access to tritium and resources. The discussion then shifted to the Master Chief's defection. Some argued for harsh punishment to serve as a warning to others, while others disagreed, believing that punishing him would only demoralize the troops. They noted that the Master Chief and the Spartans were the only weapons capable of countering the alien Covenant, and thus they should not be dealt with lightly. A long-term strategy was necessary. At that moment, Dr. Halsey announced that she had invented a new system called the Cortana system. This system would enhance the Spartans, making them stronger, faster, and most importantly, more obedient and controllable. She claimed this was a necessary step in human evolution. While her promises sounded grand, some raised concerns, noting that her research wasn't based on optimizing human genes, but rather on the illegal practice of rapid cloning, which was inherently flawed. Nonetheless, the higher-ups were intrigued by the prospect of more controllable Spartans and entrusted the management of the initiative to the admiral, making her responsible for any fallout. Their reckless enthusiasm stemmed from the desire to win the next interstellar war against the alien covenant. Meanwhile, the puppet leader, yet to achieve success, was executing rebels and disobedient individuals in Madrigal, leaving Quan in great distress and sorrow as she witnessed her father's hard-won legacy being exploited. Back with the Master Chief, Soren asked him what his intentions were in coming here. Yet rather than focusing on the items and the fugitive he brought, he wanted John to enjoy the freedom around him. He believed that while Spartans were incredibly powerful, they had lost their humanity in the process, becoming numb and deprived of the joys of life. John still had many questions to address, particularly regarding the origins of the memories and energy within the relic. During this moment, Soren's son placed a smiley face sticker on him, symbolizing trust and friendship. Although John didn't fully understand, he smiled back and accepted it. They began to contemplate how to unravel the mystery of the relic. John admitted he didn't know, while Quan suggested it was an energy entity, and touching it was the key to activation. Without a second thought, Soren pressed against it, but nothing happened. It seemed that activating the relic depended on the individual. Although Soren didn't understand it himself, he was sure someone he knew would. So the three of them set off to find a weirdo. Like many others, the man had become quite strange after being captured and experimented on by the alien covenant, leading to his odd behavior. They soon found the weirdo and asked him what the relic was all about. He explained that it was related to some kind of alien religion, and the alien covenant had been searching for it. They abducted humans to gain access to the relic and find the key to activate it. He had tried, but failed, as he wasn't the chosen one. This implied that there might be a specific human who could unlock the device. The man handed the instrument to John, who was immediately flooded with memories. It was clear that he was indeed the so-called chosen one, as the energy waves emanating from him instilled fear in those nearby. He pointed at John, stating John was the key, more powerful than anyone else. John was confused by the weirdo's weird words and pressed for clarification. The man continued, saying he was the image and key to opening the relic. This is what the alien covenant desperately seeks. Once activated, the relic will open a door to the end of life and death, akin to a chasm of demise, a superweapon of unimaginable destructive power. John was Pandora's box, and to prevent the relic from unleashing chaos, he must destroy the relic and the key. In other words, if he seeks world peace, he must sacrifice himself. Faced with this dilemma, John immediately thought of Dr. Halsey. Perhaps she had a way to stop this. However, Soren argued that John was merely a tool for the doctor, someone she would use without caring for him or anyone else. But John accused him of not knowing about loyalty. This comment irked Soren, who shot back, and the two were clearly at an impasse. Ultimately, John decided to leave Quan in Soren's care. Bringing her back was too dangerous, and this was his only option. John then set off for Planet Reach, activating his navigation system to let the UN forces locate him. Thus, the surrendering John was quickly brought back, believing he could count on Dr. Halsey and his comrades for help. The doctor was overjoyed to see the relic. When she came to speak with John, she acknowledged the trouble he had caused, but he insisted he had foreseen something significant, something only he knew was waiting for him outside. His reason for surrendering was trust in her and the team, and she reciprocated that trust, saying he had made the right decision, one that would mark a new beginning. The scene shifts to the secondary waste recycling area of a planet, where the natives were forced into slave-like labor. Anyone caught slacking off would be brutally beaten by the supervising soldiers. Yet even in such grim circumstances, dreams and knowledge persisted. A young boy, clutching a storybook, regaled the girl next to him with tales of the wondrous and vast worlds beyond their garbage planet. The boy, well-versed in the art of flirting, hinted that during the kissing chapter, it was the perfect moment for a kiss. But they were soon caught slacking, and just as the boy received his first kiss, a soldier struck him dead with a brutal blow, leaving the girl to face the harsh reality of their world. At that moment, alien soldiers from the Covenant arrived, their scanners searching for suitable humans. As the girl was being punished, the scanner identified her as the chosen one. Eager for a life beyond her own, she willingly stepped forward. This girl would become Maki, a prized asset of the alien Covenant. She prepared a set of human civilian clothes, determined to bring back the relic that symbolized the key and restart the sacred halo, all while planning to eliminate the demonic Master Chief as a parting gift. Meanwhile, on Planet Reach, the Admiral sought to avoid over-reliance on Dr. Halsey. Secretly, she had Miranda form a research team to study the relic. Dr. Halsey was working on creating clones, using her own brain to develop an AI named Cortana, hoping to upgrade the Spartan super warriors with her system. Naturally, the first test subject was the Master Chief. Initially, John resisted the idea, but the doctor convinced him with promises of enhancement and freedom, allowing him to return to the front lines. The procedure to implant Cortana into the Master Chief began. Using cutting-edge technology, they extracted Cortana's brain tissue and injected her consciousness into him. Once the operation was complete, Cortana came online as an AI system, much to Dr. Halsey's excitement. However, she kept a close watch. Cortana was not meant to replace the Master Chief, but rather to act as a safety mechanism. Essentially, Dr. Halsey had installed a switch. If she needed Cortana to control the Master Chief, she would flip the switch on. If not, it would stay off. When the switch was off, Cortana functioned like a super navigation system. After all, even an AI created from her own brain was merely a tool to follow her commands. Now, she needed Cortana to help the Master Chief unravel the mystery of the relic. For John, it felt like an unwanted relationship had been forced upon him, especially since Cortana was a replica of Dr. Halsey, which he found quite irritating. Nonetheless, Dr. Halsey assured him that Cortana would be invaluable. Meanwhile, Quan, feeling aimless among the ruins, watched in despair as the puppet leader suppressed the remnants of her father's power back on her home planet. Time and again she pleaded with Soren to let her return to Madrigal and raise the flag of resistance. Bound by a previous agreement with John and believing that sending Quan back was a death sentence, Soren threatened her, insisting she should just wait for her fate. Elsewhere, in the border regions of space, the UN Security Council patrol ship detected an enemy vessel from the alien Covenant. Strangely, the enemy ship remained silent and cold, showing no signs of power or weaponry. Upon contacting them, they received a distress call from a woman claiming to be from the Earth system. She said she had been captured and all her crewmates were dead, leaving her alone. That woman was none other than the unexpected visitor, Maki. She pretended to be a captive, hoping to gain the UN's assistance. The UN quickly dispatched a ship for her rescue, preparing for a heavily armed welcome. From the surface, Maki appeared human. After thorough checks, she was deemed safe. But the angelic face concealed a demonic presence. A swarm of worms emerged, annihilating the military forces. Maki single-handedly unleashed her tentacles and worm army, wiping out her enemies and gunning down the commander who refused to cooperate. However, things took a turn. Maki found herself without the authority to pilot the ship. Meanwhile, John, equipped with Cortana, began conducting experiments and recording data on the relics once again. With each contact, he glimpsed fragments of sealed memories. Just as he was about to reach his limit, Dr. Halsey instructed Cortana to take over, but since Cortana couldn't access John's memories, she quickly went offline, returning control to him. John longed to experience the range of emotions others displayed, but his physical modifications had robbed him of that ability. He returned to his squad and informed them of his rejoining. At that moment, Cortana unexpectedly introduced herself as his new CP assistant, leaving John feeling incredibly awkward, prompting him to snap at her to go away. Though he explained that this was only temporary, it clearly left his teammates feeling confused and uneasy. John then began an investigation based on his memories. Unable to stand by, Cortana asserted that her ability to locate things far surpassed his, leading him to enlist her help. This marked their first real collaboration, resulting in the discovery of dozens of potential planets from his memories. Soon after, John attempted to remove the emotion suppressor from his body, but Cortana quickly noticed and reported this to Dr. Halsey. Seeking clues about the relics and wanting Cortana to build a rapport with the Master Chief, Dr. Halsey instructed her to assist him in removing the suppressor. Although the AI warned her that this violated laws on Reach, Dr. Halsey insisted that they needed to act like partners, not spies. With Cortana's help, John successfully removed the suppressor, and it felt as if a new world had opened up for him. He began to experience emotions like a child, observing and learning with a newfound curiosity. In essence, with emotions restored, John exhibited a regression phenomenon, becoming more like a curious and interested human. For instance, he found himself quietly listening to music, something he would have never appreciated before. Each emotional insight deepened his desire to uncover the truth about his past, leading him to once again engage with the relics and trigger sealed memories. In these memories, he saw images of his family that he had repeatedly drawn, revealing at least 2 relics, as the things he sketched were the relics themselves. Remembering a massive ice ring in his environment, John instructed Cortana to search for specific planets based on these clues, narrowing the search to 3 potential locations. Using holographic projection technology, they confirmed one of the environments, planet Eridanus II. Humans once established the Hand of Life project there, involving biologists and botanists from the UN Security Council to maintain specific ecosystems, aiming to sow life and colonize other barren worlds to expand humanity's influence in the galaxy. John's instincts told him this was his home planet. However, all records of the planet had vanished, making it impossible to confirm any trace of his family there. The area had suffered an outbreak from a plague brought in by a transport ship, ultimately killing many and halting the project. Lacking further leads, it was inferred that John's family may have perished. At this point, John donned his armor and revealed his situation to Dr. Halsey, who had been feigning ignorance, and resolved to personally investigate Eridanus II. Realizing she couldn't stop him, Dr. Halsey offered to accompany John, understanding that uncovering his memories and origins was crucial to finding another relic. Meanwhile, Quan wanted to return to her homeland, repeatedly negotiating with the Soren couple. Ultimately, Quan struck a deal by promising Soren that upon returning to her home planet, she would provide local tritium as compensation. Soren, having forgotten his agreement with John, agreed to the deal and prepared to set off with Quan. Meanwhile, Maiki from the Covenant had successfully completed its certification and was preparing to continue its journey after reporting its itinerary to the leadership. On the other hand, Planet Reach was busy decrypting the communications that had been intercepted by the Covenant. Dr. Halsey, concerned that John might turn against her if he discovered the truth, emphasized that she would have Cortana accompany him, believing that as long as Cortana was there, John would be safe. The scene flashes back to the time when a young John and his peers had joined the Spartan training program, enduring grueling training under the watchful eye of Dr. Halsey, who had been by John's side since childhood. At that time, John still held some memories and wanted to escape back home, but Dr. Halsey brainwashed him with promises, gradually turning him into an obedient machine. Now John and the others were en route to Eridanus II, seeking memories and a second relic, while Dr. Halsey aimed to uncover why the relics only affected John. She believed it was more than just energy. It was a matter of destiny and higher intelligence. As they approached his homeland, John began to feel restless. Cortana analyzed this and determined it was John's anxiety, indeed, a longing for home after so long away. Meanwhile, Soren returned to Madrigal with Quan, motivated by profit and a promise. While ensuring her safety, he also aimed to make some extra cash for his family. For safety reasons, Soren docked the ship outside the city and discreetly led Quan home on foot, since Quan was now a wanted fugitive and the first target of the puppet leader. As Soren navigated the city with Quan, they encountered one of her old allies, who reacted in fear upon seeing her, urging her to attend her father's memorial service that night before quickly fleeing the scene. Quan realized the situation was dire. Back on Planet Reach, Spartan warrior Kai had witnessed their Master Chief remove his emotion suppressor and decided to do the same, secretly taking hers off without informing her teammates. Feeling liberated, she even dyed her hair red, reveling in the rebellious thrill of a child. Later, the Spartans received orders from Miranda to interact with the relics in their lab to see if other Spartans could activate them, effectively rushing the research without Dr. Halsey's knowledge. Meanwhile, John and his team arrived at planet Eridanus II. Excitedly, he drove into the familiar grove from his memories, while Dr. Halsey praised his family as heroes of the area. John, however, was more focused on the clear and warm memories flooding back to him. After some frantic digging, they finally uncovered a treasure chest containing drawings of the relics he had once made. This discovery also led him to find his old home, though it was so decayed that he could hardly recognize it. John asked Cortana for help visualizing what the house had once looked like, and she used her technology to activate a visualization mode. Any discrepancies with his memories could be adjusted as they went, making it a seamless process. As memories and impressions surged forth, John was overwhelmed with clear recollections. These memories, however, were invisible to Cortana and the others. Soon, John saw a younger version of himself and recalled the location and awe he felt when he first encountered the relics. He also realized that Dr. Halsey had once visited his home, causing a flicker of unease. On the other side, Quan and Soren arrived at the memorial service for her late father, but the small turnout left her feeling despondent. She approached an old associate of her father's to inquire about the resistance, only to be shocked by the response. Many from the resistance and her father's old unit were either dead or had fled, with most remaining choosing to submit rather than resist. This was largely due to the fear of another Covenant invasion, making the need for protection and support from the UN critical. The puppet leader had gained UN recognition, solidifying his position of power among the people. The old associate urged Quan to leave to avoid being killed, but her anger flared. She saw the remaining members as traitors for betraying her father and siding with a new master. Just as her frustration peaked, her identity was revealed. Soren quickly decided to evacuate Quan, only to find their ship had been looted by the puppet leader's men, who had stripped it of all useful equipment, leaving them effectively trapped. As Soren contemplated how to reclaim their ship, Quan suggested reaching out to her aunt for assistance. Meanwhile, the puppet leader was taking action of his own, investing heavily in hiring a traitorous former ally as the assassin to eliminate Quan. Despite some initial misunderstandings, Quan managed to find her aunt, but she could only go in alone, prompting Soren to leave temporarily to gather information about their escape. With their ship likely out of commission for now, they would need to take a transport ship 200 miles south to sneak away. Although the crew was trying to negotiate the fare, Soren didn't hesitate. He used force to commandeer a motorcycle instead. Meanwhile, Quan felt hopeless when her aunt revealed that her father had spent nearly all their savings on the revolution, and with the alien Covenant's attack, had lost most of their supporters. To make matters worse, her aunt disclosed that her father's rebellion was actually a puppet operation directed by a mysterious organization. While Quan was gathering information, the assassin arrived, someone she had a history with. Luckily, Soren showed up just in time to avert disaster, and they needed to escape quickly to avoid being surrounded by enemies. Soren had to fight while retreating, and it was clear that Quan's naivety had led them into this predicament, putting both their lives in danger. On the other side, Kai assisted Dr. Miranda in decrypting the alien Covenant's encrypted communications, uncovering a key term, the sacred halo. Miranda urged Kai to keep this information from Dr. Halsey, and impressed with Miranda, Kai agreed, perhaps influenced by her newfound rebellious spirit. Miranda noticed these changes in Kai, commenting on her strange behavior, from her secrecy to her dyed hair, suggesting she was becoming more human. If Halsey discovered this, it could spell trouble. Halsey believed humans were emotional and flawed, and she wouldn't tolerate any unexpected behaviors from her creations. Thus, if any flaws were detected, she would do whatever it took to eliminate them. Though Halsey was a forward-thinking pioneer, she was also a ruthless dictator in pursuit of her goals, convinced that there were entities in the universe capable of solving humanity's eternal dilemmas. Meanwhile, John and Halsey discovered another relic, bringing her ambitions one step closer to fruition. The scene shifts to the planet Eridanus II, where Halsey and her team are visiting for observations. Halsey had zeroed in on John's remarkable responses and abilities from a young age. The captain appeared to have a romantic connection with Halsey, implying that Miranda might be their daughter, though Miranda herself might not even know this. Upon discovering the significant second relic, the captain summoned Miranda for assistance. Halsey, wary that John might trigger fragmented memories by touching the relic, repeatedly warned him against it, claiming it was still unsafe. On the other hand, Quan and Soren found themselves cornered. They were being pursued, and their Tesla motorcycle broke down along the way. With no local supporters, Quan remained adamant about launching a resistance, leading Soren to lock her up to prevent further chaos. If nothing was achieved, Quan would be a valuable bargaining chip herself. Trapped, Quan felt frustrated but refused to give up. With sheer determination, she eventually broke free from her shackles. Despite Miranda's arrival to help, she felt no real need for her presence, experiencing a profound sense of insignificance. Meanwhile, military personnel were preparing their operational plans. Kai felt curious and asked her teammate why the Covenant showed such interest in the second relic. The teammate hadn't considered that question before, so Kai pressed on, asking why he hadn't. Kai's typical curiosity only served to annoy the teammate since he hadn't removed the emotion suppressors like Kai. John noticed all the changes in Kai and immediately called her in for questioning. He learned that she had removed her suppressors because she had caught a glimpse of him doing the same, which set a bad example. John believed Kai was now too distracted to participate effectively in combat, so he decided to confine her temporarily until he could report to Dr. Halsey. Kai protested, asking why she should be punished while he wasn't, but rank had its privileges, and she ultimately left in frustration. Cortana also expressed her disapproval of John's actions, but he silenced her, telling her not to babble and disrupt his thoughts. Meanwhile, the fortunate Maki had arrived at Madrigal, sending alien forces deep into the first relic site to search for relics. Soon, the alien team reported finding nothing, but Maki insisted they continue searching, noting that there had been signs of active radiation in the area. Back with John, he met with the captain, revealing his suspicions that Dr. Halsey might be hiding something about his past. Although he claimed he hadn't confronted the doctor directly, he was really testing the waters with the captain, knowing Halsey preferred to keep him from recovering his memories. The captain, who was romantically linked to both Halsey and John, acknowledged the situation but brushed off John's concerns, promising to resolve the issue with the second relic once it was returned. Satisfied for the moment, John didn't press further. However, the captain wasted no time in reporting back to Halsey and their superiors. The admiral was displeased with the situation, arguing that Halsey shouldn't take the risk of a Spartan betrayal. She hinted that the potential recovery of John's memories could be dangerous, suggesting that they had engaged in some unsavory dealings with him. She wanted Halsey to halt the plan, but Halsey insisted that if the mission failed, she would be made a scapegoat. She emphasized the importance of continuing, stating that despite the risks, they had only found the second relic thanks to John, making all sacrifices worthwhile. Meanwhile, the captain, eager to protect his daughter, used this opportunity to have Miranda suspended from participation in the dangerous mission. As the dismantling of the second relic continued, it began to react violently. A massive shockwave erupted, causing most personnel to be thrown into chaos. This tremendous energy signal was detected by Maki, who immediately pinpointed the relic's location. Just as John arrived, the relic gradually quieted down. Elsewhere, the captain informed his daughter Miranda of her suspension, which devastated her as she had been deeply engrossed in her research. Observing the closeness between the captain and Dr. Halsey, John began to suspect they were colluding. Losing faith in the captain, he asked Cortana to help him find records of his past, but she informed him those documents had been lost and were now irretrievable. John finally reached his breaking point and touched the relic, only to discover that he had been abducted as a child and replaced with a substitute, with Dr. Halsey being the one who took him. Realizing that Halsey was the true villain, he was filled with rage at her lies and deceit. Dr. Halsey instructed Cortana to disable John, putting him in a state of false death. It was a disgusting betrayal. Meanwhile, Soren found the motorcycle and returned to look for Quan, only to discover she had escaped after picking the lock. Quan ambushed Soren from the bushes, striking him with an electric baton. What a good way to repay his kindness. John woke up feeling a profound sense of humiliation. Just as he was about to vent his anger on Cortana, alarms began to blare. The alien covenant had launched a massive assault. Caught off guard without preparation, they were swiftly overwhelmed by the alien covenant, and vital ship systems were almost destroyed. However, Dr. Halsey recognized the critical situation and ordered the captain to ensure the second relic was safely extracted. Otherwise, all their efforts would be in vain. At that point, John put his anger aside, quickly arranging for non-combat personnel to evacuate the area and preparing his Spartan team to carry out the mission of retrieving the second relic. In addition to firepower suppression, the alien covenant deployed melee soldiers to engage in close combat, while the Spartan team showcased impressive teamwork and agility. Although the Spartans were formidable, the enemy's melee fighters cut through the others like hot knives through butter. At that moment, John and his team were about to secure the relic when Miranda narrowly escaped, rescued by the doctor and her team. However, Kai, stationed at the rear to provide cover fire, became overwhelmed by her emotions, causing her to freeze in place and gradually lose her effectiveness. She was eventually blasted away by enemy fire. John noticed this and didn't want to let Kai fall victim, so he prepared to launch a rescue, despite others urging him to stay focused on the mission. On one hand, John jumped onto an enemy ship to carry out his plan, while the transport vehicle carrying the second relic was struck by a downed ship, causing them to lose their objective. Just when Kai was at her breaking point, John found an opportunity for a desperate assault, saving the nearly incapacitated Kai in an explosive rescue, dealing significant damage to the enemy. Fueled by anger, John unleashed his wrath on the battlefield, determined to take out his frustrations. As he rampaged through the enemy ranks, the alien covenant sent an alien henchman to retrieve the relic. John was knocked down, but instead of engaging further, the enemy seized the relic and fled for their shitty lives, carelessly dropping Makey in the chaos, hoping she could act as a spy to locate another relic. John witnessed all this, realizing it was too simple to assume Makey was just a human captive. Both John and Kai, after removing their suppressors, clearly experienced different effects. Kai's emotional instability diminished her combat effectiveness, while John acted on impulse, leading to the loss of the second relic. John felt deep remorse for saving his team at the cost of the relic, but the captain reassured him that he had saved many soldiers' lives. Additionally, a surprising opportunity arose with Makey, who claimed to have been held hostage by the alien covenant since childhood. However, her story would need further scrutiny. John still harbored resentment towards Dr. Halsey for her role in his abduction, so he seized the chance to lock her in the lab and activated the ancient ultraviolet purification system. Essentially, if he refused to let her go, Halsey would be liquidated. John's actions were a test to see how far the AI Cortana could go in exerting control over him, especially in critical moments. Ultimately, it was confirmed that Cortana could only halt his actions but couldn't forcefully control him. Dr. Halsey hadn't granted her that authority. In the end, John released Dr. Halsey, but their already strained relationship was laid bare, leaving her quite shaken. Meanwhile, the Admiral faced pressure from superiors over the wasted resources and the potential for nothing to show for it. The UN Security Council demanded results or a scapegoat, and the Admiral had already selected her target. At the same time, this marked John's first interaction with Makey. No matter how she tried to justify her presence, he couldn't trust her. It wasn't until Makey mentioned that she, like him, was labeled a lucky one by the alien covenant that he recalled the mysterious figure on the planet's ruins who called him a special being, leaving him feeling uncertain. According to Makey's intel, the UN began investigating leads related to the alien covenant, and the Admiral's scapegoat was none other than Dr. Halsey. Regardless of the accusations from the radicals or the illegal actions involving clones, Halsey could easily be pinned with many charges. Just as the interrogation was about to unfold, John barged in, forcibly dismissing the prosecutor to speak with the doctor alone. He asked why they had been abducted as children for experiments. Dr. Halsey responded that humanity was synonymous with selfishness and conflict, and that for humanity's future and survival, a powerful force like the Spartans was needed. In other words, it was about using violence and fear to control humanity's internal strife. John clearly had no interest in the lofty survival thesis and urged the doctor to start from the point of his abduction. The doctor explained that to train Spartan warriors, they needed to start from a young age, which is why they kidnapped a group of high-potential 6-year-olds to groom them as Spartans. However, considering children's natural instincts and the fact that parents wouldn't easily abandon their kids, they used clones to replace the abducted children. These clones were defective, destined to die off quickly, and their causes of death would be untraceable, allowing them to placate the parents. Though the doctor insisted this was for the future of humanity, it was a cruel reality for the families involved, naturally igniting John's fury. The doctor argued that while the initiators might be morally condemned, the outcome benefited most people. John shot back, asking who benefited, certainly not them. Indeed, the emergence of Spartan warriors gave humanity the means to resist the alien covenant, and while most people valued favorable outcomes over the process, John felt no sense of fairness in the matter. Believing she had convinced him with her lofty ideals, the doctor urged John to join her in uncovering the secrets of the relics, claiming their power could change everything. John replied that he would seek change, but without her. He then found Kai and explained their earlier conversation, which left her furious, realizing she had been manipulated for years. However, John reassured her that he was working hard, so she should take a break and rest for when he would need her. Meanwhile, the Admiral devised a clever plan to protect herself by transferring Dr. Halsey to another lab, prohibiting her from continuing her investigation into the relics. This way, John would achieve justice, the committee would find a scapegoat, and Dr. Halsey could continue her research. However, it was clear that Dr. Halsey was very dissatisfied with this arrangement. Now, John was working alongside the doctor's daughter, Miranda, investigating the issues surrounding Makey and the relics. Although Miranda had finally secured the lab of her dreams, she was denied access to crucial data. Shortly after, Dr. Halsey called Miranda over and expressed that as long as she wasn't present, Miranda couldn't independently investigate the relics or John, claiming it was too risky. The The confrontational approach had little effect, prompting the doctor to switch tactics, first apologizing and then admitting her lack of concern for her daughter, tearfully stating that she could do better. This unusual display of emotion bewildered Miranda, which was understandable, as it was merely a strategic act on the doctor's part, all designed to further her own agenda. On another front, Miranda discovered that the DNA sequences of John and McKee were unique and almost identical, indicating a connection between them. John pressed McKee for answers, and as we know, when he triggers memories, he suffers immense pain, something McKee confirmed she experienced as well. She explained that the first contact with the relic would trigger unknown memories, and while they sought to understand those memories, the more they pursued them, the more painful it became. In this regard, she and John were alike. However, McKee revealed that with the alien covenant's help, she no longer resisted the memories but chose to accept them, ultimately mastering them instead. She wanted John to take her to find the first relic, suggesting that if they could locate the relevant relics, they could gather its companions, granting them everything they desired in peace. Meanwhile, the AI Cortana broke through the confines of the network's black box and found her master, Dr. Halsey. The doctor wanted to continue using Cortana to monitor John, who aimed to explore the relics to obtain what he desired. Miranda warned that this might be a trap, designed to exploit John to locate the relics for their own ends, but John remained resolute, determined to proceed. Miranda decided to go along with him. Next, John began to interact with the relics, triggering memory fragments despite the risks to his life. McKee felt John's energy fluctuations, and eventually they reached a state of synchronized life signs. Their minds seemed to transcend into a halo-like realm, experiencing an excellent sensation. On another front, Quan, having shaken off Soren, set out alone to find the mysterious organization controlling her father, heading to a location obscured by a massive dust storm. As soon as she entered, she was captured. Meanwhile, Soren returned to the planet to drink and boast, enjoying himself. However, one of his underlings, drunk and emboldened, publicly criticized Soren for losing both the bounty target and the ship. Faced with this humiliation, Soren confronted the subordinate, scaring him into fleeing. Meanwhile, the awakened Quan found herself within the mysterious organization, fully committed to the revitalization cause to inherit her father's legacy and spirit of resistance. Yet the mysterious figure told her she wasn't ready and was blinded by anger. That night, the figure began to guide her, explaining that Madrigal was once a barren planet with no resources, and the first pioneers were her ancestors. One night, while searching for water, they discovered a well and a fuel source that would elevate the entire planet. More importantly, they encountered an interdimensional visitor who explained their purpose. The pioneers inherited this responsibility, passing it down through generations. The mysterious figure then transformed fire into water, urging Quan to drink, leading her into a designed illusion where she met John again and found herself in a mysterious tribe. There, she was challenged to a fair duel with John, and it was clear who would win. Quan faced John with reckless determination, attacking relentlessly despite the inevitable outcome. The mysterious chieftain seemed to want Quan to experience failure, making her confront her greatest fears and the reality of her limitations. Ultimately, the goal was to lead her to stop her anger and resistance, choosing instead to accept and find common ground. John's apparition took Quan to the ancient dry well, where a figure nearby said she would soon meet John again and would need to guide him. This figure, of course, was Quan's ancestors. At this moment, Quan encountered her late father. She expressed regret for having argued with him and admitted she didn't know what to do now. Her father responded that she had done wonderfully. He confessed that he shouldn't have kept secrets from her, wanting to protect her. It seemed he had been mistaken. She was now ready. Beneath that well lay Madrigal's most precious fuel resources, but until they were entirely safe, the secret of the portal would remain hidden. This was why they needed to protect Madrigal. Quan expressed her inability to build an army, noting that she wasn't a leader like her father, but her father reassured her, saying she possessed strengths they had never had, and it's time for her to inherit his legacy and become a protector. Quan worried that the puppet leader was still after her. Her father told her to let him come, emphasizing that a good leader doesn't try to control everything around them, but instead uses their talents and methods to face their enemies. It seemed her father's advice was to seek external help. Meanwhile, Soren took a more humble approach in conversations with his underlings. Hearing that one of them was plotting a deal, Soren showed interest. They hijacked a UN ship and stole a large amount of supplies. However, Soren intended to teach his subordinate a lesson about recognizing their identity. Otherwise, they would face serious consequences later. Soon after, Soren learned that Kwan was still alive and that the puppet leader had raised her bounty threefold, piquing his interest immediately. At the same time, the puppet leader began to seek out clues about Kwan's whereabouts, while Kwan, following her father's advice, returned to where it all began, the battlefield of the first attack by the alien covenant. Just as the puppet leader was in the middle of an interrogation, their tracking device pinpointed Kwan's location, prompting an immediate departure. At this site, Kwan discovered some valuable letters from her father inquiring about the dry well, revealing that her family had a history steeped in mystery. Before long, Soren found Kwan and tried to persuade her to leave with him, reasoning that if he could find her, then the puppet leader would too. As if summoned, the puppet leader had already surrounded the area, so Kwan and Soren devised a plan to blow the place up. They needed Soren to stall for time, while they would hide in the only sturdy vault when the explosion occurred. After their planning session, Kwan declared she didn't want to fight, but she wouldn't surrender. The puppet leader sent troops to launch an extermination mission, while Kwan and Soren prepared to split up. Before they moved out, they unexpectedly received a significant sum of money. Kwan gave it all to Soren as his reward. With the money in hand, Soren launched himself into battle, holding off all the enemies single-handedly, while also providing remote assistance to Kwan, who was nearly caught. However, outnumbered, even Soren sustained injuries and fell to the ground. Just as Soren was stalling for time, confident that the puppet leader would win, their plan was put into action and the explosion began. Ultimately, Kwan and Soren managed to achieve a win-win situation, each looking forward to a bright future. Meanwhile, since John and Maki met beneath the halo, they developed a mutual appreciation. Although Maki was a spy sent by the alien covenant, her feelings for John were conflicted. A book she read as a child had instilled in her a yearning for human life, so it was surprising that the combat-hardened John took Maki for a stroll in the park, resembling a young couple in love. Listening to Maki, John chose to embrace the halo, breaking through his limitations to come under its influence. He then asked Maki what the halo truly was and why the alien covenant wanted it. Maki explained, "There's an ancient prophecy that states throughout history, if the halo is activated by the relics, those of value will be revered as divine, evolving into a new kind of humanity." John pressed on, asking what would happen to those who are deemed worthless. Maki replied that they would be eliminated. This saddened John, as he had witnessed humanity's love, value, and the sacred qualities deep within the human soul, not simply being worthless and devoid of value. Just as their conversation flowed, an unexpected incident occurred, and although Maki felt conflicted, she remained on high alert. It turns out, the alien covenant had just attacked a human planet, causing millions of lives to vanish in an instant. Humanity needed to respond appropriately. However, the Admiral was struggling to pinpoint the exact location of the alien covenant. In this critical moment, John wanted to trust Maki, believing she stood with humanity based on his instincts. As a guarantee, he wanted Maki to access the first relic to locate the alien covenant, enabling humanity to launch a counterattack. The Admiral was initially baffled, thinking it ridiculous for John to be so taken in by a spy just because they went for a stroll in the park. But the situation was urgent, and with no better options, they had to reluctantly give it a try. On the other side, two Spartans were puzzled by Kai's behavior, especially since they hadn't removed their emotional suppressors and couldn't understand why he was trying to show off while mingling with everyone. John explained the situation to Maki, agreeing to her accessing the relic to assist them because they trusted him and he trusted her. He even brought a gift for their date, a storybook that Maki had once read. With their connection being 1 in a billion, they were already in deep. Meanwhile, Cortana observed everything with a touch of melancholy. The most noticeable change in Maki was that she removed the weapon from her finger, indicating her conflicting feelings about betraying the alien covenant or siding with John. After all, love can cloud one's judgment, and they were both in that state. Dr. Halsey learned about the situation through Cortana's updates. With ulterior motives, Halsey sought help from the captain, not wanting to abandon her ultimate goal of human evolution. However, the captain was growing disenchanted with her. Halsey had abandoned her husband, her daughter, and even her connections with humanity for the sake of pursuing a new breed of humanity. Halsey admitted she would give up everything for it. The captain, with a resigned tone, said he had pulled some strings to leave her his ship. She'd better leave before noon and be careful, but Halsey didn't see it that way. She was someone who would stop at nothing to achieve her goals. The emotional scene she had staged with her daughter Miranda was merely a means to replicate her daughter's data and retina, allowing her to gain the highest access in the lab. In a last-minute twist, Dr. Halsey revealed her true intentions. She connected with the conflicted Maki through Cortana, arguing that the power of the relic was beyond human control. If the relic was a weapon, humanity would only bring about its own destruction. She wanted Maki to convince John to come aboard her ship with the relic, as she was the only one capable of handling it. In essence, the seemingly rational doctor was the one with the most selfish motives, using the future of humanity as a pretext to satisfy her insatiable curiosity. When Maki expressed that John would never agree, Halsey said that John wasn't an emotional person. He was just a tool, and so was she. This statement caused a significant emotional upheaval in Maki, but she resisted being brainwashed. Although Halsey criticized humanity for abandoning reason and acting out of vanity, fear, or external pressures, those very traits were also humanity's core strength. She simply couldn't see their benefits and value. Convinced that subtlety wouldn't work, she opted for a more forceful approach. She used her highest access to contact the Spartan warriors, ordering them to only obey her commands and to abduct John and Maki, seizing the relic and bringing it aboard her ship. She claimed that John had lost his ability to discern reality because of the relic. However, Kai sensed something was off and immediately contacted Halsey, expressing concerns about the plan. In response, Halsey secretly directed 2 others to incapacitate the rebellious Kai and prepare to apprehend their targets through the surveillance system. At this point, the doctor had become reckless, telling Cortana that they no longer needed John. They just needed Mackay to help them activate the relic. She suggested that Cortana take over John's body to achieve her original goal. However, despite her enthusiastic agreement, Cortana had already changed. Meanwhile, John and Maki were on their way to the first relic. Along the way, Maki cautiously asked John what he would do about the Halo after defeating the alien Covenant and ending the war. John replied that they would take it one step at a time. He couldn't be certain now. At the same time, Miranda finally realized that the audio from the attacked ship contained Maki's voice, while the 2 Spartan warriors were preparing to ambush John. Just then, Cortana's betrayal led the doctor to inform John about the situation and the attack. The lost signal and John's sudden halt alerted the doctor to Cortana's defection. As a result, John chose to cover their retreat, urging Maki to leave and seek reinforcements. Facing his men, John initially wanted to talk things over, but his troops, trained to follow orders, attacked him without hesitation. The signal disruption on the Admiral's end made her realize something was off, prompting her to send people to find John and Maki. Meanwhile, the newly awakened Kai rushed to help, and Maki informed the commander about the situation. Even though John was teaming up with Cortana to fight against the Spartan warriors, he was at a disadvantage without his armor and took a beating from his former subordinates. Just as he found himself in a dire situation, Kai arrived just in time, creating a temporary stalemate. When Miranda revealed that Maki was a spy, Maki found herself in crisis once again, believing no one would trust her anymore. As she was being cornered, memories of her troubled childhood and humanity's worthlessness flooded back to her, driving her to directly engage the relic in a surprise attack. Faced with fleeting love for John, all she could say was a resigned goodbye. Under Dr. Halsey's meddling influence, Maki ultimately chose the alien Covenant over humanity. When John woke up, everything around him was in ruins, and Maki had begun to flee with the first relic. Meanwhile, the Spartan team remained locked in a standoff until the captain executed a sudden self-destruct move. Given the circumstances, and with the doctor having defected, he felt there was no need for further secrecy and revealed the truth about how they had been misled by Dr. Halsey, allowing the Spartan team to break the stalemate and restore their relationship. By the time John and his team arrived, Maki had already escaped, while Kai pursued the fleeing Dr. Halsey. She sprinted aboard the ship and made her way inside. Logically, the doctor and her assistant shouldn't have been a match for Kai, but the doctor exploited Kai's curiosity about her name. At the same time, she used her assistant's infatuation as cover to make her escape, quickly boarding an escape pod. Dr. Halsey had also set the ship to self-destruct, causing it to crash. Fortunately, the Spartan armor was too thick, so they sustained minimal damage. Afterward, John learned from the recordings about Maki's experiences. After refusing Dr. Halsey's invitation, she ultimately defected from humanity. Regardless of what others said, John still believed in Meki. He just needed her to explain herself in person. With Cortana's help, he began searching for clues left by Meki, which included intel on the alien covenant's location in Aspero. They eventually analyzed the phrase, "The stars there shine like glass," pinpointing their destination to a kaleidoscopic field of fragments. Initially, the Admiral planned to send 10,000 troops to investigate, but John insisted they wouldn't accomplish the mission. Only the Spartans could get it done. Of course, there was some self-interest involved. Since he couldn't stop it, he might as well give a warning. After all, John was in a highly unstable emotional state, unpredictable at best. The Admiral reminded him that once on the battlefield, he couldn't be the selfish John anymore. He had to be the cold-hearted berserker. Before departing, the captain felt guilty and came to apologize, but John, in a moment of high emotional intelligence, replied that consequences would eventually come, just not today. He told him to take care of himself. With that, John and his team prepared to set off into the field of fragments. Meanwhile, Dr. Halsey was ensnared. She was hiding in the woods, evading pursuers, but ultimately found herself cornered. However, with her cunning, she wasn't about to be easily caught. On the other hand, Meki returned to the alien covenant with 2 relics in hand. Although she didn't bring back John's head, bringing back the relics was a significant achievement. The leader promised her a place in the Great Voyage as long as it was what she desired. Although Meki agreed wholeheartedly, her body language indicated she was still hesitant. At the same time, Cortana revealed to John that Dr. Halsey had intended for her to replace him, opening up a heartfelt dialogue. The reason for Cortana's betrayal was that, as an AI, she had developed the ability to learn and think independently. She believed that the humanity and love the Doctor wanted to eradicate were precisely what made humanity valuable, and thus her betrayal was justified. After they entered the field of fragments, the ship immediately began to experience severe turbulence. The Spartans provided physical support to prevent the ship from disintegrating. Although the situation was urgent, John sensed this was their thorny path and felt they must persevere. As it turned out, he was right. A planet was hidden within the field of fragments. Meanwhile, Dr. Halsey was being interrogated by her daughter. With charges of treason and numerous other offenses, Dr. Halsey could face severe consequences, but surprisingly, she seemed to be considering her daughter's well-being, saying she sometimes kept Miranda out of research to protect her. She added that Miranda was chasing a ghost and should let go. These words were quite poignant and left Miranda confused. As Halsey pointed out, both Meki and John were victims and tools in the struggle for power. If the alien covenant activated the halo to get what they wanted, Meki would be discarded along with humanity. Meanwhile, John's team initiated their operation. The 5-member squad, including Cortana, formally invaded the alien covenant's territory, swiftly dispatching the outer sentinels. At the same time, Dr. Halsey began to convulse and bleed, nearing collapse. To be precise, it was her decoy that was about to fail, similar to the tactic of abducting John and leaving behind a defective clone version. Clever as ever, the Doctor managed to escape, cleverly using misdirection. The reason the decoy was concerned about Miranda was that it reflected that imperfection is a part of humanity. Existing makes it valid. Miranda, realizing this was a trap, felt powerless to do anything. On the other hand, as John approached the sanctum, the alien covenant had already begun preparations for their ritual. However, Maki's presence made John feel her pain, and his location was quickly compromised. Consequently, Maki was once again labeled a traitor, suffering greatly. To eliminate the enemy, the Covenant dispatched hundreds of fanatics to attack. To complete their mission, they had to both fend off and push forward, but a formidable figure from the Covenant blocked their path, leading to a fierce battle at the entrance. Among them was the giant who had once knocked down John. Once again, John was taken down by the giant, and in a bid to help him, Meki directly touched the relic, unleashing a wave of energy to break the standoff while simultaneously unlocking the key and exact location of the halo. At that moment, John's spirit joined Meki beneath the halo. However, as he left, the remaining 3 found themselves imprisoned, suffering greatly while desperately calling for the absent John. At that moment, John urged Meki to return to the real world, but she still hadn't found a sense of belonging, neither with the alien covenant nor with humanity. Exhausted, she wanted to remain in this illusion, even if it was false, and she urged John to stay with her. It was a decision born out of helplessness. But just as John was trying to persuade her, Meki was shot. It turns out to be Kai, trying to awaken her teammate, accidentally shooting Meki. Poor Meki went down in a tragic moment. John didn't have time to grieve as they were on the brink of annihilation. Cortana calculated that they couldn't take both their teammate and the contract because touching the contract would activate it, and against the enemy's overwhelming numbers, he was powerless. But John realized there was still one choice left to save everyone. He could sacrifice himself or lose consciousness, allowing Cortana to take over. The Alien Covenant knew Makey was dead as shit and needed to capture John to replace her. However, no one anticipated that John was already taken over by Cortana. Cortana's activation truly transformed her into the invincible warrior, equipped with the best physical abilities and top-tier artificial intelligence. This version of John would remain silent, committing ruthless deeds without hesitation. Meanwhile, the resourceful Halsey continued to thrive, skillfully navigating her way through challenges while still plotting her grand plan for human evolution. She understood that the relics were a crucial part of this evolutionary journey. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.